Wow, we are live, folks. Hey, I didn't realize we went live that fast. That is awesome. Good morning. Looks like we have 18 people on already, 22 people. This is incredible. A lot of people jumping on the live stream this morning. So good morning, good morning, good morning. Folks, as you are jumping on, welcome to the live stream. My name is Mike Seeklander, and I'll intro myself and what we're covering here in a second. Man, I can't believe like less than a minute and we have 27 people on. That means it's going to be a great Wednesday morning. So good morning, folks. Hey, we'll just get into it then since we have so many people on. For those of you that are not new to this, old hats, of course, a bunch of you jumping on right now are on the regular live streams on Wednesday or Friday mornings. Tell folks, send folks a text, tell them, hey, jump on Facebook, find the Shooting Performance or American Warrior Society or the IDPA page, and we're talking about defensive rifle. We are starting the defensive rifle cycle this week. So I have a bunch of guns out here. I have a suppressed AR. I have a non-suppressed AR. I have I guess a PCC pistol that I'm going to show you here in a second. I've got some lights. I got a variety. I got one suppressor. I'm going to talk to you about a variety of other suppressors. We had a couple different sling variations, but it's an open Q&A. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. But before we get into it or do anything else, we got to cover the basics. Of course, my name is Mike Seeklander, and I'm your host for today's live stream. I will not be joined by Mr. Rich Brown today. He might be sharing or in the distance somewhere. I'm not sure. But I believe he is going to be traveling. So unfortunately, he won't be with us this morning. But before I get into the safety briefing, will someone give me a 5x5? Give me a good video check, audio check. Let me know you hear me and you can see me okay. Type that in the comments. And by the way, since you're typing stuff in the comments, if you're a Coin member, good morning, Coin members, AWS members, ACSS members as well, or someone that is doing the defensive handgun program, let me know that. As we're jumping into this, I'm going to ask you to do me a big favor and click the share button a couple times. You all know that. It's the only way we get new faces on these programs. So for some of you that have seen some of this material before, that would help me out. I believe I'm live on IDPA page as well, which means Chris is in the background sharing. Good morning, Chris. I hope you're doing okay. And I appreciate it. Looks like I do see IDPA says good morning to everybody. All right, we got 55 live viewers. That's awesome. Okay, safety, safety, safety. First rule applies is, of course, safety rules. So if you're going to be handling one of your rifles, one of your defensive rifle setups, as I'm teaching you some material this morning, you got to be safe. So number one, please make sure that all of your firearms are in fact unloaded and you have no live ammunition in your area. Now, I am going to do a 30-second violation of that, and then I'm going to get rid of this right now. I wanted to actually give you a visual and show you the visual of the mag coupler that I use in my primary, let's call it my truck gun, the gun that I would typically keep in my truck. And this is actually one of the PMag grips that allows me to set two magazines together. So this is, one of my dual mag loadouts that I would have actually loaded in my defensive rifle, which I'll show you here in a second. But of course, because it has live ammo, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to set it right over there on the shelf and get rid of it. Okay, so boom, live ammunition gone. I have no other live ammo. So do me a favor, and I want you to, if you're going to handle a live firearm, I want you to check and make sure they are unloaded. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to show you that in fact I am true, unloaded, and clear. Nothing in the mag well, nothing in the chamber. This is my truck type gun. I'll talk to you about this in a second with my Wilson Combat Whisper suppressor. I've got a full-time light on it and a whole sun optic. We'll talk about that here in just a second, why I set it up that way. I've got a second AR here. This is a non-suppressed and non-lit gun. I wanted to use this to talk to you about some other lighting solutions potentially. And this is technically an AR pistol, right? So if you look at the frame of this particular long gun, it's got an AR pistol brace. This is an arm brace, right, that I'll put on my arm and brace on my arm to shoot it, right? Okay, so that's a pistol, technically. And then this is a 9mm AR-9G pistol as well. So this is a pistol brace on the back of the gun as well. So you can tell it's a shorter version of the standard AR-9G that I might compete with in the PCC division. And there's a reason why I have this as well. We'll talk about this too. And of course, all of those guns are unloaded. I do have one more magazine for the AR-9G pistol, but it's got some orange diamond rounds in it. So there you go. I've showed you my firearms. Do me a favor, double check your rifles, PCCs, whatever you have on this live stream. Make sure you have no live ammo, nothing that's going to hurt someone. All other safety rules apply. If you can't abide by the safety rules, you can't watch this live stream. So please, muzzle direction, trigger finger direction, safe backstop and beyond. Specifically, if you're going to dry fire, we won't do a lot of dry fire on this live stream. I will talk to you about the drop, dry, pull, press at some point in time, but you have to promise me you'll comply with all safety rules or not move forward, okay? While we're doing this, looks like we got a bunch of people on. Let's welcome some people. Craig, good morning, Craig, one of my members. Paul is on. Doug, hey, Doug. Chris, how are you? Brad, good morning, Brad. MJ is on. Outstanding. Hey, Jeff Heath, nice to see you, man. Good to see you. Mr. Will Park in Montana. Alan is on. Good morning. MJ, good morning. Scott, how are you? Frank and Martin. Hey, Martin. Alan, of course. Second Alan. Tony, Brad. Oh, man, we got a bunch of people on this morning. This is freaking awesome. Is it Pikai? Is it Pikai? Man, I can't even pronounce your name, man. Pikai. I hope that's the right pronunciation of your name. Hanu is on. Mike, Linda, Danny. Hey, Danny, how are you? Tina, good morning, Tina. Mike Farmer, outstanding. Awesome. So we have 80 live viewers, which is incredible. Normally, golly, we don't have 80 live viewers for the first 10 or 15 minutes. So if I have 80 live viewers, we'll probably break the 150 record that I've been trying to reach the last couple live streams. But if you get a chance, grab this live stream. You can click the share button on Facebook. You can go to a group. You can share it in my Training Addicts group. You can share it in our Coin Members group if you're a Coin member, or you can share it to, there's a bunch of AR groups out there, maybe the Black Rifle Coffee group or whatever else. Speaking of coffee, I got to sip my coffee real quick and we're going to go. 81 live viewers right now, and we're going to get into this, okay? And good morning, whoever that is that says, wow, I don't even know how to read that. That's pretty awesome. Paul, good morning. Tomas, is that good morning? For Poland, man. Hope you're safe over there in Poland. Good to see you. Hey, Steve Washington. Is that Steve Washington? Big Steve? Big old Steve? Nice to see you as well, man. Chad, good morning, good morning, good morning. Awesome. Man, we have so many people on. Okay, so a few things I'm going to cover today, but we do have some show sponsors I'm going to talk about real briefly. This particular live stream, which is going to be all about my defensive rifle training program. So we're starting the defensive rifle training spectrum. For the next several weeks, I'll be talking defensive rifle. And I want to introduce some new material. So often we'll talk about the drop, drive, pull, press, the mounting solution. I'm going to talk to you about how to utilize that same drop, drive, pull, press around cover, around the left and the right-hand side of cover, how to switch shoulders, the value of being able to shoot off both shoulders in terms of covering your body and not exposing too much of your body, the pros and cons, when you might want to switch shoulders or when you might not want to switch shoulders. I'm also going to get into some of the close quarter shooting positions. So I'm going to be talking about the stock over shoulder shooting position, the stock under shoulder shooting position in the next several weeks. So follow along, stay with me, 7:30 a.m. Wednesday. If you're on right now and you're like, man, who is this guy? This seems kind of interesting. Get your phone out, get your iPad out, whatever you have, set a calendar reminder, 7:30 a.m. Give yourself a reminder the night before so you can get your gear out and get it ready for the next morning's live stream. And join me every time. And do me a favor, if you have someone that might enjoy this or learn from this, send them a text message. Just send them, hey, here's an event. Here's something you might want to check out. It's free. You'll learn a bunch. You get to ask questions. There's no downside to it as far as I'm concerned. By the way, the material in this program is covered in my book, Your Defensive Rifle Training Program. If you're a Coin member, you already have access to this. If you get on my website, it's listed in the show link, MikeSeeklander.com or Shooting Desk Performance. You can find this book. You could get a physical version of it. You can get a digital version of it for your Kindle or whatever else. Or you could do the Defensive Rifle Training Program, which is a digital online training program that has all the videos too. This particular live stream is also sponsored by LiveFire. LiveFire is that new cool training app that we are in version 1 of. That's pretty darn impressive. If you're on LiveFire right now, shout out to you other LiveFire users. Send me a message. This show is sponsored by LiveFire. If you go to the Google Play or the App Store and check out, just search for LiveFire, L-I-V-F-I-R-E, LiveFire. You're going to get a full part-time function. I'll show you actually. I'll give you a glance of LiveFire real quickly. So when you have LiveFire on your phone, it looks like this little orange icon. Of course, you might see some content with Mr. Mike Seeklander. You get a full repetitive par timer on it. So I can set this to repeat, countdown, do whatever else. So you get a lot of things for free, but it's a great app. So check it out. This show is sponsored by LiveFire, has a bunch of content. They're about to do version 2 or release number 2, which is really exciting. The things they're going to put in version number 2 is pretty darn awesome. Okay. Yeah, Yes. Alan Kelly, are you going to have a replay for later or be watching the range? Yeah, the replays on these things are always on Facebook. We have not been deleting them from the Facebook pages. So if you go to the American Warrior Society Facebook page, the replay is always there. Of course, we all have also been reposting a lot of these on YouTube. Most of them are not currently on my YouTube page, although I'm thinking about putting them there. But the replay is on Facebook. And if you want them on YouTube, man, if that's better for people, just say, hey, Mike, we'd rather have these suckers on YouTube, and we'll start throwing them up there. What happens in these live streams is I cut them up into chunks and then send some of the tips out to Instagram and really try to utilize the material, but it becomes quite a bit of work for something that we do on a regular basis for free. Anyways, good morning. Looks like we have Delaware in the house. Andrew from South Africa. That's awesome. South Africa. Share with some of your fellow South Africans. That's pretty darn awesome. Greg from Texas. Good morning. There's Mr. Bob Beal. Outstanding. Okay. All right, folks. So let's get into this real quick. Let's start talking about defensive rifle setup. So if you're watching this right now, and by the way, I am sponsored by Wilson Combat, as most of you all know. So you're going to see Wilson Combat guns this morning, from this, pistol caliber pistol to this, shorter barrel rifle length rifle with a suppressor on it. And I'm going to talk to you about guns and gear and how you might potentially set up your guns and gear. I'm also going to talk about light mounting solutions, because it's pretty important that you understand light mounting solutions, how to mount your light and why I do exactly what I do. And we'll do a bunch of Q&A. So if there's something you're wondering about in terms of a defensive rifle or position, you can ask that. And then, later on, before I get off here, I do want to go back into, excuse me, some of the material that I covered during the pistol caliber carbine sequences we did the last several weeks, in terms of the mount and what I call the drop, drive, pull, press, dropping, driving, pulling, pressing, and actually learning how to control the recoil of the rifle or the carbine by utilizing those 4 tips. Okay. So we'll talk about this. I'm going to break this down. We're going to start at the front end, and we're going to work our way back, and then we'll do some Q&A. And by the way, typically I would have Mr. Rich Brown feeding me some questions on here, coming in and on and off screen. I see your questions, but I'm looking at the comments. So if I'm watching the camera and teaching something and you throw a question up there and I miss it, just throw it back up there again. Okay. By the way, we have 80 or had 80 on a second ago. Do me a favor. Let's just take 1 second. If you haven't clicked share, do me a share. I want to break 100. Then I'm going to start talking about the suppressor, the light on this gun, and then some of the different solutions I have on it too. So do me a favor, click the share. I'm going to get a sip of coffee. I know that Chris is sharing like crazy, bro. That's why I have 87 people on. David from Delaware. Good morning, David. How are you? Mr. Ted Leonard from Mississippi. Ted, I believe, was my defensive handgun online graduate, maybe. Memphis Beach, number 1751. Simplify, Mr. Memphis, how are you? Awesome, cool. Oh, by the way, looks like IDPA is sharing them on IDPA YouTube channel. So if you want to get on and watch some of the replays, you can do that as well. So anyways, I don't see 100 live viewers, but that's okay. I'm going to get into it because the 73 people watching me right now are the most important people in the world. I said that out loud. You are the most important people in the world right now because you're on live with me. So let's talk about this. First of all, in terms of a defensive rifle, you may say, well, Mike, why a suppressor on a defensive rifle? Here's the deal. I want you to think this through. Everybody wants to have that long gun, that home defense long gun, or that vehicle defense long gun. I want to put a short long gun in my car. I want to get a backpack gun. But I think, to be honest with you, a lot of people don't think that through. So let's talk about it. A short backpack gun that's long, like a short rifle caliber gun, is going to be let's say a 10 to a 14-inch gun. If you have the paperwork on it, it's going to be a shorter length gas system. And the point is, without a suppressor, if you grab that gun in your home in the middle of the night and someone kicks in your door, something happens, and you have family members or a wife or a husband or a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever else, and you grab it and you're coming out there and you're searching, boom, and you finally engage. But you have no suppressor on the gun, right? Or I'll give you another solution here in a second. What do you think is going to happen in terms of the noise in that room? I'm not sure how many of you have shot a rifle inside of a room without earmuffs, but it's incredibly loud, right? I've done it by mistake a couple times, been in a shoot house and not had my ears on in different situations. But this little, this particular muzzle brake is set up for the Wilson Combat Suppressor, but it's incredibly loud. So I can guarantee you this, if I were to just start engaging, right, with this particular setup and no suppressor on, right, my family members, anybody around me is probably going to be immediately deaf, right? They're not going to hear anything. I'm not going to be able to communicate anything to them at that point in time. So if you're using a long gun in a truck or a home or whatever else, I think a suppressor is really kind of a needed deal. Like when I keep this full time in my truck, it has a suppressor on it. So if I got out of the truck and had to shoot the rifle for whatever weird reason, and most of my self-defense is going to be with the handgun, but if I had to utilize the rifle, it's got the suppressor on it. Now, the supersonic crack is still loud. So if I put the suppressor on the rifle, right, and this is the Wilson Combat Suppressor, by the way. This is a steel suppressor. This is the only one I own. Actually, that's not true. I do own one more suppressor from a different company called Templar Tactical, I believe. But it's an old suppressor, and I can't find a good muzzle brake for it. So if you know anybody that makes a muzzle brake that will fit a Templar Tactical 308 suppressor, DM me, the direct message me. But this is the Wilson Combat Steel Suppressor. It does, the cons of a suppressor is it adds some weight to the gun. And of course, you got to do the ATF paperwork, which is stupid, as we all know. But you have to do this, the ATF paperwork, because you can't buy a silencer, which is not a correct term. You can't buy a suppressor without that paperwork. Now, you're still going to have that supersonic crack, right? So when I have the suppressor on the gun and I shoot it, right, I'm still going to have that supersonic crack. It's going to be very loud, even without ears, but it's not going to be anywhere near as loud as it would be, in a situation where you shot this without a suppressor, okay? So moving back the gun, you're going to see a couple things on the front of the gun here. You will, and by the way, good morning. Hey, I see Matt from Tulsa. Good morning. Wow, pistol caliber. Johnny says he'd prefer a pistol caliber over rifle caliber, and we'll talk about that in a second. Johnny, you are spot on. I agree with that. And audio and blindness. Jeff Heath, you're exactly right. So in terms of the front of the gun, right? So you see a couple things. Number one, you're going to see my light mounted at 6 o'clock and my switch mounted at 12 o'clock by design. I'm going to show you another thing that I tried for a while that failed miserably that I strongly recommend against, and I'll tell you why here in a second. Now, of course, you see on the front of the gun my backup iron sights. Now, my backup iron sights, they're the Wilson Combat sights, right? So I could technically push the button. I could fold these things down, right? But I don't, because they would hit my switch. So if you can see my switch on the top of the gun there. But I also leave that backup iron sight up both times so I can see it through the optic quicker, right? So in other words, that iron sight on the front doesn't get in my way. I can still use my optic. It's not necessarily an aiming tool, but it might give me the ability to aim quicker through the window in a very, very close, big shot, right? But it's set up where I've got the rear sight set up, so the front sight's already up, so I can very quickly flip the rear sight up if my optic fails, and now I'm ready to rock and roll, okay? So I have my front sight set up. I don't want to have to go through the process if my optic fails of, reaching up and deploying my front sight and then reaching back and deploying my rear sight. I want to have the ability just to flip that up and go, right? So that's my take on that front sight. Now, in terms of the light mounting solution, this is super important to me. I have my light mounted at 6 o'clock. To me, that's the best place for the light. Assuming you don't have, there's some folks out there in law enforcement, in the military that have, a white light, a visible laser, and an IR laser, and a bunch of things on the gun, which requires that they may mount their light. For example, this is at 6 o'clock. Maybe they mount their light at 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock or different varieties. The problem I have with a light mounted at 3 or 9 o'clock in different positions is if I'm trying to quick brace and brace this rifle up against the edge of a barricade, that light, right, gets in the way, and it can't also shine. So if this is mounted at, at the edge of a barricade at 6 o'clock, right, if I turn that light on, it still works, right? So I can be on the edge of a barricade and the light works. If the light is at 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock, well, the light is still behind the barricade, so I would have to move the rifle out even farther to utilize the light. Okay, so let me show you one more thing. This is something I see all the time on the Instagram, right? So I see folks take these weapon-mounted lights. Let me actually fold this down real quick. I see people all the time on Instagram mount these lights at 12 o'clock. So they take a standard, this is like a Surefire X300. They take a standard Surefire X300 or whatever else, right? And they mounted it, 12 o'clock on the rifle, right? So the theory there is when you're mounting that rifle or the light at that position on the front of the gun, then you can utilize your thumb and just activate the switch, right? And it seems kind of cool. It looks kind of cool having that light up there at 12 o'clock. But here's the problem with the light at 12 o'clock. Assuming it's low enough where you can still see. Let me get this there. I should have attached this earlier. I'm sorry I did not attach this. I don't think I can attach this sucker without, no, I can't, without removing this front side. But the point is, assuming it's low enough, right, where you can still see through your optic, here's the problem. The light then illuminates all of the smoke that comes out of the front of the barrel. So when you fire this rifle, the light is illuminating the smoke above the barrel. Your optic then is basically, when you're trying to see your dot, you're trying to look through that smoke. Now, there's smoke all around the muzzle, depending on the ports in your comp, right? Sometimes it comes out low, sometimes it comes out to the side. I tried the 12 o'clock position twice. I tried this mounting solution. Of course, the front sight wasn't there. I moved it farther back twice, thinking I can activate the switch with my thumbs. It really looks cool. That's a big fact, right? It looks cool. It failed miserably. So when I went out to the range and shot, because the light is on the top of the gun and it's illuminating the smoke in the top of the muzzle, once that light hits that smoke and those small particles of smoke and all that stuff coming off the muzzle, right, it almost creates a visual wall. So when I was shooting at 30, 40, 50 yards around cover on a still summer night here in Tulsa area, literally I would have to wait a second or two for that smoke to clear to get a good visual of what was going on downrange. So for me, the 12 o'clock light mounting solution with an optic on the top like this is a no-go. Don't do it. If you don't believe me, try it. I tried it twice. I tried it and it failed. I took the optic off. I mounted it back to 6 o'clock, right? Then I said, hey, maybe it was me. Maybe it was just that one night. It was super humid, whatever else. It really looks cool. So I put the the light back on the top of the gun again, being stubborn, and it failed again. So I would not recommend a 12 o'clock light mounted solution. I couldn't make it work, so maybe it was just me, but to be honest with you, when I see that light mounted solution, I always ask myself and wonder, did the end user actually go and shoot the gun in low light? Did they actually test that? Did they shoot in different conditions and different distances that might be appropriate for a civilian or law enforcement shooter? Well, a civilian shooter, 30, 40, 50 yards might be your property. That might be realistic. I don't think they tested it. If you do test it, I think it fails most of the time. By the way, hey, Scott Giesick is on this morning. Good morning, Scott. Chris, good morning. I see you jumping on. And Akeen is on. Good morning. How are you, man? Outstanding. David Garrett from South Carolina. Good morning. Good morning. All right. Alan, have you had your light get soot from shooting, or if it's just past the muzzle? Yeah. So Alan's question is, where if you look at my light mounting position, let me take the suppressor back off. And you'll see very quickly that when I get the suppressor unscrewed eventually, the light is past the muzzle, right? So I do this so I can get my hand as far forward as possible, right? I want this arm in the same position that I always have it. So with this length gun, this allows me to get my hand and drive it up under there and get it as far out as possible. But the question is, well, does my light get suited up? Yeah, so if you look at the light a little bit, it's not bad because I clean it, but it does get suited up. But you can see kind of the top of the light right there. That's kind of suited up from some of the gas and explosion that comes out of the comp. The other one you can actually see a little better here. There you go. This is a good example. So you can see some of the soot on the light from that. This is a little bit different comp. This is a Q comp, right, for the Wilson comp makes. And there are actually no ports on the bottom, but it still kind of gets some of that soot. So you got to keep the light clean, I admit. But for this, it's the shorter front end on the gun, on the defensive pistol in this case. So I want to mount the light as far out as I possibly can. If not, my hand's going to be way back here, which to me is less control. I don't like the fact that these arm braces, I'm going to put it on my arm and brace it, right? Is shorter anyways, but the point is, yes, Alan, to answer your question, it does get some soot on it, okay? So let's see if I have some questions popping up here. So Keen said, did you discuss the cons of a 45-degree mount? Ken, you're going to have to give me some more details on what you mean by a 45-degree mount. I would assume you're talking about a 45-degree light mount. If so, just add to your comments and I'll try to answer that, okay? So Steve Washington, what kind of light options do you suggest for AR? So there are a lot of different options. So this is an actual Streamlight ProTac. I had another light laying around, one of the Streamlight variants that dropped to the ground or fell. These lights, I said I wasn't poo-pooing on these lights in particular, these kind of handgun lights. I'm just poo-pooing on the fact that I would not put them at 12 o'clock. They could very easily be mounted to 6 o'clock, right? And then you could run a light switch, an activation switch, to the top of the gun like this. I'm a big fan of the 12 o'clock activation switch, so I can activate the light with that hand. I can switch shoulders and I can activate it with either thumb, right? So I can do that. I also do like some lights that offer the ability for a momentary activation switch or a full-time activation switch, right? So why might I want a full-time activation switch? Well, maybe I need to walk up to a door, right? And I want to compress the rifle as I open that door, or go to a different position as I open the door. And I want to have the light on and my other hand free to defend the rifle or whatever else. So that momentary and permanent activation switch are pretty key. Streamlight, Surefire, my two favorite companies. They've both given me products. I think they're both good companies. I have not had either of the lights from either companies fail. So I would pick, a light that has the features you need that will allow you to mount it, for example, to this rail as far forward as possible. It has both a momentary and permanent light switch. Or you could just go, like I said, a little bit more affordable, and you could throw a standard, handgun light, on your lower rail, and then you could utilize a thumb to activate that switch. For me, I'd rather have a full grip on the rifle than a partial grip on the rifle too. So there's a lot of different options. Okay. Yeah. So Akin runs a scope with an offset and light for backup irons. So here's the deal, Akin. I'm okay with the other mounting solutions of light. We talked about that a little bit earlier. The problem with anything on the side of the gun is anytime you're trying to quick brace on something, the light gets in the way. So that's the problem I have. 6 o'clock, once again, allows you to shoot. This is the edge of a piece of cover. It allows you to have your muzzle just past the edge of cover and the light's still exposed. If I had a light down here or up here, when my muzzle was past the cover, I would have to rotate the gun out farther or move it out farther, which exposes my body farther. So I find that rarely there's a good time not to have a 6 o'clock mounting solution. Now, if you have a second optic on the gun, you have a variable optic on the top, which I don't run a variable optic on my defensive rifles because I don't know if I'll use them very much. I mean, when am I going to shoot defensively to 200 or 300 yards? And I can shoot at 200 yards all day long with a holosun. 300 yards. I could go out right now and hit a man-sized target all day long with a holosun. Now, I know I can't crank the optic up and spot and use it to determine, hey, is that a threat or is that not a threat? But most circumstances, this is going to do me just fine. It's very, very fast at close range. Most of what I'm going to do is 10 to 30 yards. The biggest distance in my yard right now is about 30 yards. So that would be the farthest I would shoot in most cases. If I'm shooting at 50, 75, or 100, self-defense oriented, right? Not on an animal like a coyote or whatever else. Boy, that's a weird situation. So I'm not a fan of other positions, but I'm not poo-pooing on it either. The only thing I would tell you all is don't mount the light at 12 o'clock unless you test it. So make sure you hear me clearly. Don't mount the light at 12 o'clock on the gun unless you're trying to look Instagram cool or you test it. You have to test it. And if you find what I found, it will fail. It will illuminate the smoke that's coming out of the barrel in the optics path, and you will not be able to aim very well at longer, harder shots. Okay? Makes sense? Okay. Anyways, hand stop at 6 o'clock, rail mount for better grip. Did I miss any comments on a hand stop? Okay, so Craig is asking about, all those cool little devices, those short little hand stops and the little doohickeys you put at, 6 o'clock where you could ride your hand up here. So on my defensive rifles, right, or defensive carbines, I'm going to have a hand stop, i.e. a light, right? So there are the two light solutions I have set up. They just happen to be the lights I have. So those are my hand stops. I don't need a different kind of hand stop. There's no, the hand stops aren't bad. Like my buddy Virgil has one of the angular Magpul angled foregrip, which by the way, I have a great idea for that we could turn into a product, but I'm not going to put it online right now. But he does that so he can kind of rest and it doesn't hurt his wrist as much as he's doing long, slow searches around positions. But I don't run a lot of hand stops. I had a group of law enforcement guys once that had, lights and lasers and all kinds of crap all over their rifles. And we started working in a vehicle. So you had to transfer shoulders, right, and shoot around the front of the vehicle. Then you had to transfer shoulders and shoot through the window of the vehicle. Then you had to pull the rifle out and come to the rear of the vehicle and brace on it. And what they found was all this crap on the side and these low monopod kind of setups hung up on the seatbelt, hung up on the door and the steering wheel and all these areas around the vehicle. They're patrol vehicles, and you saw them taking those things off and throwing them because they don't offer a ton in terms of shooting, right? Recoil control. Okay. Hey, if you're just jumping me, my name is Mike, or jumping on. Should I say jumping me? There we go. Humor. Good morning. I'm your Wednesday morning comedian. That's what I am this morning. If you're just jumping on Facebook and watching live, click the share button and tell your friends what we're doing. And if you don't know what we're doing, we're talking defensive rifle setup. I've walked through the front half of my gun, right? We talked about the suppressor, why a suppressor might be an integral tool for a defensive or a car rifle. We've talked about the light mounted solution, the light switch solution. We talked about why my backup iron sight is flipped up. Okay. So now let's move our way down the gun. So let's talk about the rest of the stuff on the gun. First of all, you might see that do I have any questions? No questions here. Good morning, model of the Holosun. So this is the 510C GR. So this is the GR. Who asked that question? Ken. This is the Holosun 510C GR. The other one I have is the R. It's the red one. I got the GR, the green one, just to see if there's a difference between the green and the red. Okay, and I have Holosuns on all these guns. They've worked well for me. They're not a sponsor. They did send me like 1 or 2 optics way back when. I probably sold 1 million Holosuns, so they should be a sponsor. Holosun, cheapies, come on, send me some more optics. But there are other great optics out there. I have always been a big fan of aim points. I do have one EOTech that's been perfectly fine for me, and some other variants as well as some optics. Okay. So, but on the optic, let's talk about that. That's important you understand. If you look at the mounting position of the optic itself, you're going to see that it's as far forward as I can get it on this receiver, right? The upper receiver. And the reason I mount my optic so far forward is when I'm actually driving the rifle into my face, the optic being farther forward occludes my vision a little less, meaning the farther it is away from my eyes, right, when I mount it, the smaller it becomes, which opens my vision up just a little bit more as I'm shooting for target acquisition and maybe to see a little bit more on either side of the optic. I think, because I have not proven to myself that a forward mounted optic makes me a little faster on my transitions. Interestingly enough, though, and I talked about this during our PCC cycle, at one point in time, I mounted one optic forward and I mounted one optic to the rear on. I had 2 identical PCCs, and I really couldn't tell much of a difference. So I went with what I defaulted to on my rifles, my defensive rifles, and that's a forward mounted solution. Now, my backup iron sights, you're like, well, Mike, why are you running your iron sights that far forward, right? Why is it there versus back here? Well, it's simply so it's out of my way when I need to work the bolt. So if my iron sight's, more back here, my hand's hitting it, right? It's in my way. I want it out of the way of my charging handle. Pretty simple, right? So that's how I have my backup iron sights. Now my front sight is up the entire time. My backup iron sight is down the entire time. And for me, on this case, I could go with the big peep or the little peep. I'm always going to have the big peep up just for fast acquisition if my optic fails. Okay. On my rifles and my carbines, you're going to see that I have ambi safeties, right? So I can work the safety with my right thumb. I can switch the other side and work with my left thumb. So I want to be able to work the safety with either thumb. I'm not a fan of working the safety with my index finger, right? So that's why I have that, right? These are the Wilson Combat Andy charging handles. This one, I believe, is the medium. So they have the small that has, if you can see this, I'm not sure if you can see this from behind, right? There's 2 holes, right? Okay. They have the small, medium, and large. So you have different varieties. Matter of fact, compared to that variant, you can see there's 3 holes, right? So that's a little bit different size charging handle on the gun itself. Okay. Moving back, this is the I think this was originally, this is a Surefire, not a Surefire, but a Super Stock, maybe a Rogers Super Stock. Yeah, it's a Rogers Super Stock designed by Mr. Bill Rogers, who designs all kinds of things. I got one of these years ago before Wilson Combat was putting them on their guns, but this was designed by Mr. Bill Rogers. Just a standard adjustable stock. My stock is locked all the way out as far as possible. The farther the gun is from my body, the stronger I am in terms of my drop, pull, press. And then, of course, I have a single point sling on this. It's the Magpul MS3 or MS4 variant. I could easily run this as a 2-point sling as well. But I'm not slinging the rifle and climbing the house and climbing things very often. So for me to use a secure 2-point sling system, I don't use that very much. But, you know, it makes sense for me that I could grab this out of my truck, I could sling it up, but now I can very easily switch to the other shoulders and it's not in my way. That's the one thing I like about a single point sling is I can switch shoulders pretty efficiently and I don't fight it quite as much as I fight a 2-point sling. However, you know, I'm not poo-pooing on a 2-point sling as well. Okay, so there's my sling. So that's my full defensive rifle setup, right? And we'll contrast that here with a carbine, because someone mentioned, hey, pistol caliber carbine might be the way to go. Let me see if I have any questions I can answer. So Michael Goins, yes, I had a couple bad levers, battery assist device. A bad lever is a device that attaches to your bolt lock release through the trigger guard. So you have a little lever right here you can hit with your finger where you can lock the bolt to the rear or you can release the bolt with that bad lever. Some people talk about bad levers causing malfunctions because the lever is inside the trigger guard. I never had a problem with a bad lever. They worked really great. They were really fast, but I found a lot of my students didn't have bad levers, right? So I would end up teaching this kind of manipulation, right? Load the rifle. You know, I ended up teaching more with this anyways. So I don't default to a bad lever. I don't have bad levers on most of my guns anymore. I have one in the safe right now with a bad lever, but not any of my current guns. I don't have a problem with them, okay? Oh, good question. Chris actually asked, after you disable the safety, so we're talking about the thumb safety. By the way, there's a tip for you. I put this out. I think I put this out on Instagram. I will, if not. Always, always, always ride that safety. So notice how my thumb is riding that safety. So whatever position I'm working, click, you hear that safety come off, right? So if I'm shooting, click, safety comes off. And yes, at this point when I'm riding the safety, I'm actually pushing forward on it. So if you can see that in the light here, right? So I'm actually pushing down on the safety itself, right? And I want to maintain and make sure that safety is off the entire time, right? So I ride the safety, and then if I stop shooting, safety goes back on. The second I'm done shooting and I'm scanning, the safety goes back on, right? But I practice, click, there's the safety, back on, back off, either shoulder. So yes, I do ride the safety, okay? Diego, would you consider bullpup pulps for defensive weapons? Well, bullpup can certainly be a defensive weapon. It depends on what variant you're talking about. Bullpup rifle, they're bullpup shotguns. I'm not a huge fan of most of them out there, to be honest with you. I think it's so hard to beat a good configurable AR-15 type system, whether it's an AR-15 223 or an AR-15, you know, pistol. This is a 9mm version. We'll talk about this here in a second. For me, it's hard to beat. So I don't play around with a lot of. I'm not going to call a bullpup a gimmicky and say anything bad about them, but I don't have the need or desire to mess with many other models other than the standard AR-15 variant that can be customized so many different ways. I don't know. I can't see a downside. I don't know. Why wouldn't you own a gun like this? So you can do all these different things with that have an incredible reliability factor in these days, right? I know the original M16s, maybe not as much, but they're good to go. Okay, I don't see any other questions right now. I do want to talk about the other gun here. So I brought this to you to show you an option. So if you don't have the ability to put a suppressor on your defensive rifle, right, a pistol caliber might be the way to go in an AR rifle or pistol configuration. Understand that this is a pistol configuration because this overall barrel length with the welded comp is shorter than 14, whatever the law is. I think it's 14.5 or 14.7. Maybe it's 16 inches overall with the comp. But the point is, this is shorter. So this has to be set up as a pistol with a pistol arm brace on it. Can't be a standard stock, if you will. But whether or not you go with a standard rifle length or pistol length, the 9mm offers the ability to run inside your house or maybe go into a parking lot and shoot without earmuffs on around family members and whatever else. And they're loud, but they're not that loud. Like I can go to the range and I can shoot this without earmuffs, and I would not recommend that. I'm not telling you to do that, but it's not that loud, not that bad. Compared to, for example, this particular muzzle brake comp, which is designed for the Wilson suppressor, is extremely loud, and it vents gas out to the side by design, right? Even this one that's designed to vent the gas in a little bit more, a little more successful way is still pretty loud if it were a 223, but it's 9mm. So this is a second option if you want that short gun in your truck or in your home. Maybe you can shoot it more accurate. But here's the deal. I want you to think about this. I think we should all have something like this, right? I mean, you look at the news right now. I'm not saying that we're going to have to fight our own government or whatever else. I'm not going to get into politics. But these are great tools to have. You can't argue that. You cannot argue that. But you want to think them through. 99% of the time, probably, I'm going to defend my home or my family or my vehicle with a handgun. But if you need one of these, right, and you don't have one, and you haven't trained one, you haven't learned how to retain it and protect it and utilize it and maybe shoot around cover with it, well, then you're selling yourself short. There were millions and millions of these AR systems and black rifles sold, in the Obama era, when we were all scared he was going to ban them. And then the next guy came in, and the next guy came in. We all have the same fear. A lot of people buy them, but they don't train with them, which is kind of insanity, right? Hey, Kamal Ajis, go to wilsoncombat.com and you can check out pricing on the guns I've showed today, by the way. Let's see what else I have here. Okay, 16 inches. Yeah, okay, Alan, you guys got me on the number. 16, exactly right. Why would everyone just get a honey badger? Good question, John. Everybody should just get a honey badger. I think that's an awesome setup, right? So we've talked about a few things today. We've talked about defensive rifle setup and light position and suppressors and why I think suppressors are important in a defensive rifle. But I want to talk, just give you some tips and reminders real quick. Those of you that have been with me a long time, this is just a refresher reminder. You've heard me say this before, but those that are on right now that don't know me and haven't watched me. So let's just talk about the shooting position itself in a simple manner. And I'm going to expand on this in future sessions. So when you're shooting your long gun, a few things I want you to consider. Number one, I want you to center the stock up as much as possible. The farther out of your body the stock is, the more it's going to turn you. So the more centered you can get, and it's not perfectly centered. There's no way I could aim the gun if it were perfectly centered, right? But the more centered the stock is, the better control you're going to have. Once you have that position, address this position in your hand. Should be nice and high. Once again, your tip is always, always, always ride that safety. So don't forget about riding that safety. Okay. And number two, the other hand, the support hand is going to go as far forward on the gun as possible. In my case, I'm going to slide it right up underneath the light, and I'm always going to ride my light switch, right? So if I'm shooting with my right hand and my left supporting hand, I can activate the light and shoot it. If I were to switch shoulders, that same hand goes straight up to that position so I can shoot it, right? So this thumb is always in the same position in terms of my shooting position, okay? When you're shooting, I want you to consider dropping, driving, pulling, and pressing. So what that means is I'm dropping the elbow, I'm driving my shoulder forward into the gun, I'm pulling the stock into my body, and I'm pressing my cheek weld into the stock itself. Learning The cheek weld, the proper cheek weld is the key to speed, right? So if you want to learn how to mount the rifle and shoot fast, getting the proper cheek weld and very quickly finding that optic is the key, okay? So consider drop, dry, pull, press, squaring up as much as possible. My feet are still in an athletic position, right? So if you look at my feet right now, they're still shoulder width or plus. My right foot is probably slightly back if I'm shooting in my standard stance, right? Okay, if I had to lean around cover, that right foot would be slightly forward. But drop, drive, pull, press in terms of shooting your defensive rifle, and that's going to give you the maximum recoil control in terms of shooting it. Don't forget, ride that safety. I'm always practicing wiping the safety on and off, on and off. And I see students all the time when we go to the range and shoot our first live fire drill, they mount the rifle and they're pulling on the trigger as hard as they can, and the gun won't go off because they didn't practice the aspect of wiping the safety off. Wipe the safety off. Wipe the safety off. Okay? Let's see what else I have here, folks, and we will wrap this up. A little off topic, Chad says, if you ever run a 5.7 by 28 upper, I believe it's a Banshee. No, I have not. I have not ran a 5.7 by 28. I shoot 99.9% 223 556 because I have the most of it. It's the most effective all-around caliber for what I'm doing in terms of defensive rifle. I can also shoot some varmints and coyotes and stuff with it. I wouldn't hunt a heavy animal, maybe whitetail deer with a 223 if you're using an AR type system for dual purpose. In which case I might go to our, probably actually to our 300 hammer, which is a fantastic all-around caliber. That might be a great ranch gun, is the Wilson Combat 300 hammer. Caliber developed by Bill Wilson because he's a big hunter, and that caliber does it all, and it doesn't recoil that much more than a 223. So you got to check that out. Man, Michael says he loves watching your videos. Okay, go back to work, Michael. Have a great day, man. I appreciate that. Watch it later on. So thank you. You're welcome for the time. Joey, shooting prone. There's a lot of tips I can give you, but I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm not going to get on my floor here and try to figure this camera angle out. So maybe we'll talk about prone in the future. I do cover prone in the book. So if you get a chance, and not trying to sell something, but it's not that much money, get the book. We talk about prone and kneeling positions, including supported kneeling positions in the book. And maybe in the future live stream, we'll talk a little bit about prone. But understand the challenges of me getting all the way down here. Can't see me, so I can't show you the prone right now, and I'm not going to try to take the camera off my computer. Sorry, man. So that's a great question, Dan. So nose to charging handle. Yeah, you could put your nose on the charging handle if you show me a purpose of putting the nose on the charging handle. So if for me to get my nose on the charging handle, which to me is absolutely foolish, now I got to compress the stock all the way up here, and I'm going to put my nose on the charging handle. So when the gun is recoiling, it's hitting me in the nose, and all of the gas that's coming out of this crack of the gun, because there's gas constantly coming out of your rifle, is now definitively and directly in my eyeballs. So I think nose on charging handle is probably not the great way to go these days. Extend the stock, put your cheek into the right cheek weld position so you can see the optic of your iron sights, drive the cheek in, drop, drive, pull, press. Let's forget about all that nose on the charging handle, hand on the mag well things that, the top practical rifle shooters, the top 3 gunners did away with 30 plus years ago. None of us were using that stuff 30 years ago, 30 more years ago to shoot fast and accurately. It targets from 10 yards to 500 yards. So I would say if we weren't doing it to shoot fast and accurately, then probably not a great technique these days anymore. Okay. So Scott talks about optical exclusion may protect you. Possible. I don't know, Scott. I've actually heard that from several shooters. The shooters that actually retain their hearing, if you think about it, because some of these guys in these big battles, and they can still hear, is almost amazing and kind of strange. Okay. 300 hammer. Michael, how far shooters are placing their hand on the handguard. So Michael, in terms of the handguard, where do we do this hand? I could tell you that you are and you could grab a rifle, grab it on the mag well itself, right? And move the rifle, and you can feel how little control you have over the hunt again. You can feel how much less control you have on the front of the gun. Now take that same hand and move it forward a little farther. Now try it. Now move it forward a little farther. Now try it. And move it forward to a good position. Now I'm literally controlling the rifle really good. I can fight with it, I can retain it, I can mount it, and I can move it, right? So this is a much stronger position for me. I don't go all the way forward. I lose control here. And most of my guns aren't this long anyways. But me, this is about the best I can offer. It's almost straight, arm is slightly bent, in a really strong position. Almost if we did a tug of war, I would reach out and grab the rope about right there, right? And I would tug. So that's my arm position. All righty. Folks, sorry, man. I hope I didn't miss any questions. Okay, I don't see much else coming up here. Hey, Frank from VA. Nice to see you, Virginia. All right, I don't see any additional questions. Hey, so we'll end with this. I talked about a lot of things. If any other questions pop up, I'll answer them. So we're just starting the defensive rifle spectrum. I think next week I'm going to talk a little bit more about switching shoulders, going bilateral, why you would do that, and effective use of cover, because we've talked about the drop, dry, pull press. If you haven't watched my long gun video on drop, dry, pull press, how to truly control the recoil, go back and watch that so you can reference that in next week's live stream on Wednesday morning, 7:30. Set your calendars. Set a reminder if you would, please. But next week we'll talk about switching shoulders, shooting around cover, exposing your body, why you might consider switching shoulders, and when maybe it wouldn't be a good option to switch shoulders, because I'm not saying it's always the best option, but I think you have probably both. So we'll talk about that next week as well. And then maybe, who knows where we're going. If you have if you have something you want to learn or you want to talk about in these live streams, it's all about you, because I'm doing it for free, folks. So I could be sleeping right now, or I could be on the range right now. So if there's something you want to learn or work on, let me know and we'll see if we can do it. Okay. Thank you all for watching. Looks like we're getting some thank yous. Hey, thank you for the shares and the questions as well. I appreciate everybody jumping on. It was an awesome show this morning. I'm kind of excited about defensive rifle, and I want to cover some new material in future sessions. So we will do that as well. So that's all I have, folks. Do me a favor, if you have any questions about the program we're talking about, go to the links in the actual show itself. There's several links in there, so check those out as well. Next week, 7:30 a.m. on Wednesday. Set your calendars. I hope to see you. We'll talk about using cover and switching shoulders and moving around some obstacles and go from there. I believe Mr. Rich Brown is live on his show on 7:30 a.m., but I can't promise you because he's still having trouble with Facebook, folks. I do not know why. The Facebook has kicked him off. So that's all I have. You all stay safe. Have a great day. And until then, train hard.